Hey guys, Scripted, we're here with another video, and in light of the exit of Kathleen Kennedy and her being replaced, I thought we would look back at her tenure, at what happened in terms of what projects and things took place, and then we can go ahead and basically put them in order of least to most offensive. Just about everything is offensive on some level, just about everything. But we're going to go from the least offensive to the most offensive. Now, before I get into this, though, I do want to say I'm not going to say anything about the cartoons other than the Lego stuff, because I have seen some of the Lego stuff with my kids. But I don't watch cartoons. I just don't. Tried to get into the Bad Batch, got through 2 episodes, thought it was boring, and couldn't watch it anymore. And same with all the other ones. I've watched a handful of episodes of each one, and I didn't get into it enough to really give you guys a proper comment on it. So you guys let me know what you think in the comment section if any of those were offensive. But we got lots of other stuff we can talk about. We got things like video games, we got things like theme parks, and we got all the live action stuff. So we're going to get into that. But first of all, I just want to just show you guys some funny stuff here. And the way that people are reacting in their own way to Kathleen Kennedy leaving in her legacy.
Peak on peak on peak on peak on peak. Over the last 14 years, we've been eating good as Star Wars fans. And without Kathleen Kennedy in control, that might never have happened.
That is an interesting take. I'm going to have to go ahead and disagree with that. Eating good, I mean, you guys let me know. I feel like we've been getting, if this was food, it would make you sick. So I find that very humorous. This guy's responding to a guy who said that Kathleen Kennedy made a bunch of these movies. People are so brutally misinformed in our world today. There's people that are just so totally misinformed about tons of different topics. So this guy thought that Kathleen Kennedy was somehow responsible for these hit movies that she was involved with as a producer. And I've been saying all along, and this is where her legacy is problematic with Lucasfilm, that as the producer, she dealt with logistics and stuff like that to shoot scenes and made sure to stay on budget and all that stuff. She had absolutely no creative input. Apparently she tried to, but people didn't really like her ideas. So I think it's important to acknowledge what she did well, and she did do that role very, very well. There's no question about it. But then to just say, well, she's the reason why these movies were successful, you'd have to be a complete idiot. And so this guy made a perfect comment on the idea that Kathleen Kennedy, quote, made Jurassic Park. Michael Crichton wrote the novel. Michael Crichton wrote the screenplay. John Williams made the score. Steven Spielberg directed it, Stan Winston made the practical effects, and ILM did the CGI. So she didn't have anything to do with that. Now, on the flip side, based on what her role actually was, these guys are talking about, the guys that made the film are talking about how she did a really great job when there was a hurricane. There was an actual hurricane when they were filming. So here's what it says. Wasn't Spielberg's coffee girl not at that point, and Kathleen Kennedy wasn't his coffee girl. That was just him being hyperbolic and exaggerating, because rumor has it she always was trying to push her way into the creative end, and it rubbed some of these guys the wrong way, but they wanted her there because she was very good at the other stuff. So Kennedy wasn't Spielberg's coffee girl, and her creative suggestions to Jurassic Park were pretty bad and ignored, but her actions as a producer, paying for food, medicine, and getting the crew out after the hurricane were praised as absolutely exemplary. And the guys that made the movies did a little video about that. We don't need to show that because it's going to make this video too long. That's what she did. And again, you can't say that that's a bad thing. That's great. The problem is people are taking this idea that she was a producer and good at stuff like this, right? Getting things organized quickly and stuff, and turning that into, well, she's the reason why E.T. got made. And it's like, dude, no, stop being stupid. Stop being so childish. Let's acknowledge what was reality and acknowledge what wasn't reality, instead of being like children arguing about stupid stuff. The other thing I wanted to mention was this, going into this sort of ranking thing I'm doing, this is what we're dealing with from the get-go.
If you ask me, the leadership needs to change at Lucasfilm, because they didn't really treat the characters with reverence and respect like Kathleen promised George. In that video you can go look up on YouTube where she said, I promise to take care of the characters and treat them with the respect they deserve. Didn't really happen, and people are kind of pissed. But that's just my opinion, and I'm an evil Sith Lord, so hey, whatever.
And so, like, think about it. So there's a guy who's like, this is sort of, the reason I wanted to show this little clip of this guy was because he's like the epitome of the guy who's going to spend a ton of money on Star Wars, right? So, like, her job as president was to make Lucasfilm profitable for the company. That's her job, right? And this guy dresses up like Darth Maul, puts in all that time and effort. And I did that when I was a kid at summer camp. We did the whole bald cap, the horns, we did the whole deal, the makeup. And it didn't look as good as that. And it took a really long time, hours. And that guy did his full, like, body and everything. I just did the face and neck. He spent all that time and energy, and he's talking about how disappointed he was with how she treated the characters that she had promised she was going to take care of. That's really a great illustration of how to destroy your brand. When you have people like this willing to spend time, energy, money, almost an obsession, and you've disappointed them by just simply making stupid decisions. So let's start with some of the stupid decisions. Let's start with the theme parks. She was the president of Lucasfilm when the whole Galaxy's Edge thing was conceptualized, developed, and she was there at the opening of Galaxy's Edge. She wasn't like a direct designer or anything like that. There were other guys that like dealt with that stuff, but she was still over them. So Scott Trowbridge was the guy who was the executive sort of behind the way they designed it and all those other things. But she oversaw the group that was responsible for the storytelling, the immersion, and how they went creatively with Galaxy's Edge. That was part of her responsibility. Galaxy's Edge, for me, is offensive. It's been offensive. You didn't use any actual biomes or planets from any of the movies. Any of them, not even the sequel movies, nothing. You just made this new thing, and then you dumped a bunch of sequel characters into it, and then you made this app thing on people's phones where you go around and you get a social credit score, basically. It's essentially what it is, to find out what type of person you are. And then at the end, you get they tell you if you're more leaning imperial or more leaning rebellion. Like, it's literally a social credit score thing. Like, did the Chinese come up with that? Anyways, it had nothing from the prequels or the OT era at all, other than the Millennium Falcon, but that was in the sequels. The rides were all sequel-based. All the people walking around, you had the Rey and the... They did add, like, Filoni's characters, right? And Favreau's, right? So you did have Ahsoka, and you did have Mando. But other than that, it was all sequels, right? It was Kylo and Rey and duck-billed helmet stormtroopers and all that other stuff. And again, in an era with no acknowledgement of the other two eras whatsoever, and on essentially a new made-up planet. And why I'm offended by that is and you're going to hear this a few times this video, was how easy it was to make it work and make people happy. I get it. They were going to do something sequel related. I fully understand that, because they invested all that money and they wanted to make it successful. And, of course they were going to do something sequel related, right? I mean, you can't avoid that at that point. But I think they didn't want to do an OT or prequel area there, because they felt like if they did, say, an OT area, a prequel area, and a sequel area, no one's going to go to the sequel area. It was almost like trying to force people into caring about the sequels. Because the most logical thing you would do if you were opening up a Star Wars theme park, and you have 3 eras of Star Wars, the most logical conclusion would be, okay, people go into a spaceship of some kind, right? And then they go through hyperspace. Obviously, it's just on the screens. And then the door opens on the other side, and now you're in prequel land. Now you're on, Coruscant or something, right? How cool would that have been if they made like a mini Coruscant, like a section of Coruscant City or something, right? And then you're going around and there's prequel characters, and you can go check out Palpatine's office or something, or whatever, right? Like, there's a million different things you can do. And then you go into a ship, and then it takes you to another place that's the OT, and maybe it's Hoth, or maybe it's Tatooine, right? Maybe you literally Have the Mos Eisley Cantina right there for people to go to. No, instead they made some other random cantina. And then you get in another ship or whatever, and then you end up in sequel land, and we're going to use Crate, or we're going to whatever, right? That, to me, was the most logical thing to do. But instead, they went with the new planet that had nothing to do with anything. No OT, no prequel, and no music, which, of course, they're now changing, right? They're changing. Now that she's left, they're putting OT characters in. They're relegating the Rey cosplayer person to just this little resistance area that they have there with like some X-Wings and stuff. But the main area is going to be all OT people. Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, R2, 3PO. They're going to be playing John Williams music. That's cool, but the place they're at has nothing to do with anything. So now they're releasing a comic book to make it connected to the OT, this Batu or whatever this place is they made up. Just stupid stuff. Offensively stupid. It was such an easy job you had, and you decided not to do it because you thought you knew better, and you thought you could make some weird social credit score game that everyone was going to love, and nobody did. Instead of just doing, normal theme park things that you do everywhere else in the world. And that's part of the problem with Kathleen Kennedy. She thought she was like a genius. And again, I guess if you're living under other people's shadows, you're like really eager to like make up stuff that you think is awesome, even though it's not. So that to me was really offensive. And then even more offensive was the Galaxy's Edge Hotel. It was awful. It was so bad, it closed within a year. It cost them $1 billion. What a complete waste. And when again, I've said this in previous videos, and people online don't seem to understand this. Okay, it lost $1 billion, but actually it lost more than that. Because all that time and energy went into building that hotel when it could have went into building something that was profitable. So you lost not only the $1 billion, but you lost all the time and energy and labor that went into it. All that time spent making that hotel instead of making something that would make money. So if it took a year to build, that year with all those guys building it was wasted building that instead of building something profitable. So it's actually more than the cost of making it. And anyone who's owned a business knows that. That's why they try desperately not to waste time. As somebody who is framing, I'm telling you, they don't waste time when they're building stuff. That was offensive. But was it less offensive than some of the movies? Probably. As far as the video games, the Star Wars games were good. In terms of the Jedi ones, the Survivor and Fallen Order, I thought they were pretty good. I don't even like Inquisitors and all that stupid crap, but I thought they were pretty good games. Like, they're video games. I don't take them too seriously. They're going to be OP force powers in them and stuff that's kind of silly. It's a video game. What are you going to do? Outlaws was horrible. Absolutely horrible. And she does oversee the games as well. Her and her people. It's not all her fault, but her and her people. And then they greenlit the games. They greenlit Star Wars Outlaws. Which is being mocked online since its release. Okay. So I'm not going to do...
Don't worry. I'm not going to do what everyone thinks I'm going to do. Flip out!
Like I said, too much of the animated stuff, but this is what we're here for. Let's get into the ranking of the live action shows. Actually, first let's do one more thing. Let's just check this out real quick. So there's that. Yeah, basically, right? And there's this guy, Kathleen Kennedy, is responsible for some of the most amazing Star Wars stories, whether you want to admit it or not. You will admit it. Yeah, it's the reason we're critical is due to a lack of admission. We're just critical for fun. I have my own reservations about stuff, but eager to see what this new Lucasfilm era has in store. That's all the conversation I'm having. Okay, way to go, buddy. Why do people make it all about themselves? Like, everything's all about me with social media. First he tells you you're an idiot if you won't admit it. Then he says he has his own reservations. And then he says, I'm eager to see what they're going to do. And that's all the conversation I'm having. Okay, buddy. Lucasfilm needs a 180 like yesterday. Also, Indiana Jones is one of the biggest movie flops of all time, and Willow was so bad it was literally erased from existence. It literally was erased from existence. Willow was erased from existence. I mean, if the small vocal minority delusion were true, we wouldn't have had a 6+ year gap between Star Wars movies. The normies checked out. Disney Star Wars merch doesn't sell. They're changing Galaxy's Edge to an OT theme. Galactic Starcruiser crashed and burned in 1 year. No show on Disney Plus has good ratings since Luke picked up Grogu in the Mando Season 2 finale. The High Republic book series failed. The Force's female story group has lost 5 of its, quote, prominent members. Star Wars Outlaws flopped hard and Kennedy is stepping down. Did I miss anything? So, let's look into this. Okay, so everything's live action except for Star Wars Lego. So I put the Lego Star Wars specials as the least offensive content that I've seen, right? Remember I said I can't get into the cartoons. I just can't. Other than Lego, because it's super funny. So they are by far the least offensive. They make fun of the sequels and the games and all the specials and stuff. They are well made. They're silly, but they're supposed to be silly. I have absolutely zero issues whatsoever with the Star Wars Lego stuff. It's funny and good, and even the games are good. They are. Even the sequel trilogy stuff in the Skywalker Saga game or whatever it's a fun game. It's good. So anyways, but even the shows, the Lego Star Wars specials were the least offensive. Next on the list for least offensive would be, I would say, Rogue One. Rogue One has its issues. Like that's the one thing. Like least offensive doesn't mean no issues. They all have issues. One of the issues I have with Rogue One, and I did a video about this years ago, was they had the Death Star plans in Attack of the Clones. George showed them. So the idea that they had to or that the Death Star needed to be built, and they were still figuring it out, and that this guy was going to put this weakness in it when the plans were already done. I just have a hard time believing how that would work logistically. The plans, as somebody who's worked on buildings, like we'd use our phones, and we like everyone that was involved could see. So I just find that hard to believe. But whatever. Overall, it's a pretty decent film. That was one of the problems. And then like she gets a message from her dad, and like basically the message she gets is the entire story arc that she follows. Like there's no. Like, you see what's going to happen. Like, he tells you what's going to happen. That was kind of dumb, because she literally just followed exactly what he told her to do. He told her, like, that there was a weakness in the Death Star, how to exploit it, how to find the plans, tells her she has to get the plans. So it's kind of like... So you're just basically watching her do everything he told her to do, so it kind of lacks. It's like they're giving you expository dialogue, and then you get to watch it. Like, it's kind of weird. Instead of expositing stuff that you don't see. Anyways. I just think it's overrated. It was also pretty lame that the Rebel Alliance just kind of gave up. It was a bunch of just, like, crotchety people that didn't want to do anything, and so she has to be the hero because they're just too dumb to care. Or they're just too lazy or whatever. That's the impression I got. There's a couple other funny things, like where they're like fighting on the beachhead to go get the 8-track tape, and I don't know. And there's people, untangling cords, and I just didn't think it was as great as a lot of other people did. I think in some ways people were just so desperate for something decent, and it had been so long since there was a decent Star Wars movie that I think people kind of let a lot of stuff kind of slide that wasn't super great, And then, the whole thing with Vader at the end where it's like, kills a whole bunch of dudes. They've passed the 8-track across whatever, the disc to all the different dudes. And then the ship gets away, the rebel ship gets away. And then 20 minutes later, he's like having an argument with Leia. And you're like, dude, what are you even arguing for? You literally just watched these guys pass this thing to each other. Like, what are you even discussing anything for? You should just be going in and slaughtering everybody, including her, and finding the disc wherever they hid it on the ship. Like, that's, you know what I mean? It kind of just makes A New Hope kind of weird. And then, of course, they compounded that by making him be able to use the Force to stop the ship from getting away in the Kenobi show. And you're like, why didn't he just do that? But that's not Rogue One's fault. That's somebody else's fault. And, Cassian Andor is the moral, ambiguous character. The morally ambiguous rebel. That's where this whole thing starts, where they make the rebellion, like, not actually super good people, which is what they were under George Lucas's Star Wars. Instead, with this and then the Andor show, they made it into this, like, morally ambiguous, just kind of whatever. The other one that was weird for me is the rebels in A New Hope are just dumbfounded by the size of the Death Star when they had already seen it. So you were like, oh, okay. Why are you guys so shocked? But as far as the production and everything else, I mean, it's pretty decent. It's the least offensive live action they made, as far as I'm concerned. Mandalorian is next. Now, Mandalorian would be number one if they ended it. Well, actually, you know what? It wouldn't. It still wouldn't, because Grogu's force powers are way too OP. But the Mandalorian would have been less offensive than Andor, in my opinion, if it wasn't for season 3. And I'll tell you why when I get to Andor. But first 2 seasons were pretty cool, other than Grogu's ridiculous force powers that make no sense. He's a baby, and he's pukey and cooey and stupid, and he still somehow is the most powerful force user in the history of Star Wars. Even more powerful than Rey. So that didn't make any sense. That offends me. Season 3 was extremely offensive, with switching the plot to talk about Mandalore and made it all about Bo-Katan. The Mandalorian became not just secondary to Grogu, but tertiary now to another main character in Bo-Katan. And it just felt like they went down that whole like whammon route again after the first 2 seasons were pretty well received. Luke showing up getting Grogu was pretty well received, and then they screwed that up. So pretty offensive. Definitely more offensive stuff coming here, but overall it was pretty offensive. It had some stupid stuff in it that was just completely unnecessary. Next I have Andor. It's, as a drama show, it's okay. If you feel like watching any of my reviews, the writing actually isn't that great. A lot of people think it is, but when you actually break it down, it's actually pretty bad a whole bunch of times. Obviously, the most obvious ones are the stupid 2-episode arc where Andor flies the TIE fighter to go meet somebody and they're not there, and then he's caught in this sort of guerrilla argument warfare thing, and then they settle it with rock, paper, scissors. That was absolutely atrocious, and those episodes were completely pointless. They didn't even need to be in the show. So it's a lot of runtime for the sake of runtime. Another example, right at the very beginning of Season 2, Andor's sitting in an Imperial outpost, and that's where he steals the TIE fighter, the prototype. And he's sitting there without a helmet on, and somehow he got in there, when in Season 1, the Imperial security posted his face everywhere. They had a holographic image of his face. The whole Imperial system knew who this guy was. But somehow he's just sitting there and no one says anything. Somehow he got into that outpost. But see, these are the writing problems that nobody really discusses because they feel like it's for adults and it feels dramatic. But when you really break it down, there's a lot of really stupid stuff in that show. I'm sorry, it's offensive to me. I'm not going to go into any more details. You can watch my reviews. Those are very detailed, and I back up everything that I say in them. Again, though, many other things are far more offensive than Andor. It did have some cool stuff in it. It's definitely less offensive than some stuff, but it is more offensive, in my opinion, than The Mandalorian, Rogue One, and the Lego stuff. Skeleton Crew is more offensive. It's just another protect the child thing. That's all they do. Right? They did it with Mandalorian. They did it with Clone Wars all the time. Dave Filoni's obsessed with it. That's what he just loves to do. They even did it in Obi-Wan, right? It's just all about protect the child, protect the child. And it was just a crappy Star Wars version of sort of like a Goonies. And it was just a really bad attempt to... Like, they didn't even hide it, right? They even promoted it as like 80s Amblin style. And it's like, so you're telling people that you aren't really creative right off the hop. And then just like all the stupid offensive stuff, like the stupid suburbia stuff where it like literally just looks like Earth and all the kids are in school. And it's just like this earthy, stupid show. And it just was awful. It was just an awful show in the end. The first few episodes, I kind of gave it a chance and it was kind of like, it's not that bad. It is bad, but I mean, it could be a lot worse. And you know, some of this other stuff they've put out is far more offensive, right, by the time it came out. Because we had already had the sequels and stuff. But in the end, the plot just got really, really convoluted and dumb. And people started making really stupid decisions. And the whole thing at the end with the robot didn't even make any sense. And even like how they got down to the vault, and there just was so little security, and they just trusted this guy. So when Nanawood or whatever stupid name is, that was dumb too. He just like tells them he's there to inspect the vault, and nobody questions anything. They just let him go down there with like 2 battle droids or 2 whatever droids, security droids. It was just like, what? Why are you guys just automatically trusting this dude? You're supposed to be this sophisticated AI, robot-ruled planet, whatever, that's there on behalf of whatever, the galaxy bankers or whatever, and you're making all these gold coins. Why are you letting this rando go down there without any, like, real security clearance or, like, doing anything other than him just telling you? So there was a lot of really stupid stuff, very offensive. Very dumb in the end. Kind of a cute kid show the first few episodes, and then it just completely tanks and is really terrible. Next on the offensive list was Solo. The way he got his name sucked. They never should have put that in there. Just the way that he threw himself at the female character, I can't remember her name. It's like, okay, so that's what we're making Han Solo. He just throws himself at every female he comes across, right? Because he kind of did that with Leia too. It's like, can we get a little bit of nuance here? Is he just like this desperate guy? I was really disappointed with what they did with the Kessel Run. I actually believed it was just because he was super fast. Like the ship was just crazy fast with all the modifications he did. Like that was one of the appeals, right? It was like a hot rod. You know what I mean? Like the Millennium Falcon was like the hot rod of space, like the pinnacle. Because like it didn't look like much, but the modifications Han made it the fastest ship in the galaxy. You were like, that's sick, like that's awesome. No, he found a shortcut through space. So they completely ruined that whole mythos of the Millennium Falcon in this movie. And it sucked. A lot of the lighting was terrible. In a lot of the scenes, you couldn't see hardly anything. It was just like, it was almost like they were covering up weaknesses in sets or production, you know what I mean? Like backgrounds, things of that nature, maybe aliens. To try to cover that up, they just kind of made everything kind of dark and gloomy. It's also cheaper. They did a lot of that in Andor too. They did a lot of that in Kenobi. And it just seemed kind of lame. Then you had Darth Maul at the end. And what was really silly about that too, so she... I just remember this. So she dims the lights and like closes the blinds. You don't have to do that to look at a hologram in Star Wars. Watch the prequels. You never had to do that. Watch the OT. When Vader's little holograms in the AT-AT, they didn't shut the lights off. So that was so corny. And then he's there, and that little scene with him was completely pointless. Had nothing to do with anything in the plot. And then he ignites his lightsaber for literally no reason other than for the audience to be like, oh, look, Darth Maul's lightsaber. Just stuff like that was super lame. I did like the fact that he at least shot Buddy right away. He didn't wait for him to shoot, so they kind of like bucked George's change. That was okay. But overall, just a super offensive movie. Just stupid. Book of Boba Fett is so offensively dumb. I can't even believe it. That's next on the list. Like, literally 2 episodes of Mando Season 3 are basically in the Book of Boba Fett because they marginalized Boba Fett so bad he couldn't even, like, run his own show. And just everything they did with him sucked. The fact that he survives the Sarlacc pit, for me, sucks. It sucks. It's stupid. It takes away from the Sarlacc pit. It takes away from Return of the Jedi. The fact that he gets out of the Sarlacc pit, is awake when the Jawas steal his armor. He's awake. Like, he wakes up and sees them. You see that happen. And then for some weird reason, so he knows he got out of the pit with his armor on. They made this whole plot thing of him looking for his armor. And then he gets in his ship and flies into the Sarlacc pit. Like, and the Sarlacc pit's grabbing at him and he's looking to see his armor. Like, as if you're going to find it by looking at it from above from a ship anyway, dummy. But you crawled out of there with it on. And they just did that so they could have this scene, this visual of him shooting the Sarlacc pit with his Slave One ship, which isn't even called that anymore. They call it the Firecracker or some stupid thing. So, like, that whole show was awful and made no sense. And he makes no sense in it. And then And then he's chilling with the Sand People, and we're like, we're using the Book of Boba Fett show to like show how caring Sand People can be and how they have families. Like, enough of this crap. It's one of my problems with the Clone Wars with the clones. Like, they're NPCs. Let's focus on stuff that matters. Sand People are just there to be the negative NPCs that the heroes have to deal with. That's the purpose of them. They're not there to, like, we don't need Sand People lore. We don't need clone lore. Like, they're just, like, it's so silly to me. Anyways, the show was terrible. You had him bouncing on the speeder like an idiot. Like, his character was nothing like you expected it to be, right? Like, he's dancing like an idiot. They're trying to make him funny. There's nothing supposed to be funny about Boba Fett at all. It's supposed to be very intimidating. He never has his helmet on. He's trying to go legit and be like a legit businessman. When he goes to Jabba's palace, Bib Fortuna's sitting on the throne and he's all fat. And I'm like, first thing I think of is like, wait a minute. So Jabba's gone and all of these crazy bounty hunters and like gangsters and like guards and stuff just went ahead and let Bib Fortuna take over, and they're actually like letting him do that? Excuse me? What? Like, when did anyone give a single solitary crap about Bib Fortuna? He was supposed to be Jabba's kind of bumbling assistant. He wasn't supposed to be some gangster. So he shoots Bib, and then he wants to go legit, and then he goes and tries to work with some like group of teenagers gang with their Vespas, multicolored Vespas, like a rainbow on Tatooine. Who thought that was a good idea? And then somehow he trains his Rancor. Like, this bounty hunter somehow knows how to train a Rancor that the Hutts give him. And then he trains the Rancor in a matter of days and then is riding it around. And then Grogu sticks his hand out and puts it to sleep. A baby? That show was so offensive and so awful. The stormtroopers, as much as the stormtroopers are just NPCs that get shot and stuff, in the Book of Boba Fett, it's like Wile E. Coyote comedy levels of like how useless the stormtroopers were. Those scenes were awful. There's like a handful of times where Boba Fett kind of looks cool, but then when you think about how just incompetent and dumb these stormtroopers are, they're like the most incompetent, dumb stormtroopers in the history of anything done in Star Wars. Just awful. Anyways, that's my rant about Book of Boba Fett. Absolutely terrible show. Plot was stupid. Everything about it sucks. Looked cheap. It's just awful. And again, he couldn't even lead his own show. They were so insecure about him that they made 2 of the episodes completely about the Mandalorian and then put the Mandalorian in Boba Fett's show. Like, it was just, the Mandalorian was supposed to be Boba Fett. It was just, the whole thing is just so stupid. Next on the most offensive list is Star Wars The Force Awakens. We all know, right? Rey's force powers, her beating Kylo, Han and Leia were awful, just awful, estranged, like as if. Relationships with the kind of passion they had in the OT don't just end like that and be weird and awkward. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. And that's coming from a guy my parents are total opposites. Han and Leia completely remind me of my parents, believe me. Arguing over stupid stuff, it's funny. There's no way they would have been like weird and estranged and we can't talk to each other properly and especially the reason that they were estranged that they made up, that like because Ben went dark side, they couldn't have a good marriage anymore. Like, what are you talking about? You'd think they'd be like, hey, let's stay together and figure out what's going on and find him and blah 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 blah. No, we're just gonna get divorced. Like, it just is the stupidest thing they ever could have done. No Luke, Han, and Leia being reunited. The biggest travesty of probably anything. And some people might say, well, that's why this should be at the most offensive on the list, but it's not, because there's even more offensive, stupid stuff. And the only other reason it's not higher up on the list is because when Rian Johnson took over and did episode 8, he did have the opportunity, as difficult as it would have been, but he did have the opportunity to explain some of the stupid stuff in The Force Awakens. I don't know how you'd explain Han and Leia very well at that point, but you could have sort of given a better explanation for Rey's powers and stuff like that. You could have figured out a way, and so that's why it's not higher up on the list. Next on the most offensive list is Ahsoka. Just a total bastardization of Thrawn. Dave Filoni stealing EU stuff and giving stuff to his characters, giving Luke's arc in the EU to Ahsoka. Now she's going to go after Thrawn. Like, give me a break. It's absolutely awful. The show is so bad, I can't even believe it. Like, Sabine gets stabbed, instantly is fine and healed. Sabine is training to be a Jedi. Like, we just got to make another stupid girl Jedi. And I say that not because I have a problem with girl Jedis. It's like, that's why they did it. Because she was already a pretty cool character from everything I've heard from people. People liked her in Rebels. So why would you change this sort of, badass, Mandalorian chick and then make her a Jedi as well? Like, everybody can't be everything. Anyway, but she's training. She sucks. She can't even move a cup across the table. Then she pushes Ezra and he goes like 100 feet in the air out of nowhere. With basically no training, right? That's how it rolls, I guess, with Filoni Wars. And then I think the whales are stupid. The idea that you get inside of a whale and it goes like super hyperspace across space and takes you to another galaxy, which was also stupid. The fact that Thrawn survived that in Rebels is completely stupid. He's in the ship. The whales break all the windows in the ship. And then they take him away, and somehow he survives that and the vacuum of space and is in this other galaxy. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's terrible show. I'm not a big fan of the whole Dark Jedi thing. Like they have the exact same motivations and everything as the Sith. Like, it's kind of stupid. Oh, they had to make the New Republic dumb. And then, like, Ahsoka's going to the shipyard or whatever where they're making the big exhaust things for this ship that's going to be able to travel across to the other galaxy. And she's talking to the guy and he's like telling her how like a whole bunch of people, half the population still wishes they were under the Empire. Like, what are you talking about? Like, at the end of Jedi, they're cheering. He shows the bunch of planets and everyone's so happy that this empire ended. If the Empire wasn't horrible, then why did we need Star Wars? What did we need it for? The Empire's horrible, and that goes back to the Force Awakens, the last one that was offensive. Where did this First Order come from? Everything Han, Luke, and Leia did was pointless. And it's the same in Ahsoka. And the New Republic's dumb, and they have dumb people on the council, and they're arguing about stupid stuff. And they're basically presenting them as stupid and incompetent, and that's supposed to sort of justify in our minds why the First Order could show up and do stuff, because the New Republic's just a bunch of idiots. The whole thing, and the idea that, again, that citizens were just super upset about the Empire ending, like, it's just awful. It's so bad writing, I can't even believe it. Next on the list, Obi-Wan Kenobi was so bad, you guys. So we've all know this. If you followed my channel and if you know anything about Star Wars, you would know that all of the literature and the magazines and all that stuff that was coming out during the prequel era and all that stuff was very explicit about the fact that Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader fought on Mustafar and then they did not see each other or hear from each other again until A New Hope or until the original Star Wars on the Death Star. So that was established. So they decided, no, we're going to try to capitalize on Vader Kenobi fights. That's essentially what the show is. Vader Kenobi fight capitalization. That's what they were attempting to do. But then they're like, oh, instead of having Obi-Wan Kenobi protecting Luke on Tatooine, let's have Bail Organa send him a message through space that could get intercepted by the Empire and tell him that he needs him. And then he goes to find Leia, who was abducted by Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers. And just everything about this show made no sense. It became the Reva Leia show, like Reva the One Inquisitor. Again, Obi-Wan Kenobi, much like The Mandalorian, is relegated in his own show. What he's doing on Tatooine is stupid. He's like a butcher. You know what I mean? He's like working for like some guy who kills huge animals on Tatooine, crate dragons or whatever. And he's cutting meat and he's stealing meat. So it's like in A New Hope, he's got a pretty decent little cottage, right? He's got a nice little house there, and you know he's He seems comfortable. He doesn't seem like he's hurting. But in the Kenobi show, he's stealing meat. Like, what are you doing? And then, he's fighting with Owen in a very cringy way. It just was stupid. They're just trying to, justify the fact that Owen wasn't a huge fan of Ben Kenobi. He thought he was nuts. So then they made these stupid scenes where they, hate each other. Completely unnecessary and dumb. You didn't need to go that far. And again, you had Reva, and she was a horrible, stupid villain. And Vader never really does anything about it. She gets stabbed twice, once as a kid and once as an adult, still lives. The other idiot, the Inquisitor guy, he gets stabbed. Flat-headed Inquisitor that's supposed to have an elongated skull, which was in the prequels, they just ignored for some reason. Like, it looked so cheap and horrible. All of the Inquisitors looked awful. And he gets stabbed, and then they come out and say, oh, well, it's because that species has 4 different stomachs, so only one of them got stabbed. And you're just like, oh my gosh. And then the fact that Vader stabs Reva and then walks away thinking she's dead, and you're like, I feel like he would know if this idiot is dead. And then just the special effects, like the wire work when she's running on the buildings, is just awful. The Leia Kenobi scenes are cringe. When Kenobi sees Anakin, it's just so cringy on this random other planet. And then, the scenes where, for example, they go to the Imperial checkpoint, and there's, this big struggle, and, they have to, shut off the laser things that are, blocking you getting through. Meanwhile, you could literally just walk around them. If you just walked, 20 feet, you can just go around them. So you're like, what is the point of this? And then, of course, again, they have the driver of the bus, the mole man guy, and he's all, pro-Imperial. There's, this huge movement since Disney took over Star Wars to sort of marginalize the morals and ethics of the good versus bad. So where, the Empire's really not that bad. The Jedi are actually bad, right? Luke with the whole thing in The Last Jedi about how bad the Jedi were. It's what? It's supposed to be good versus evil, timeless. That mole man should hate the fact that he has to go through Imperial checkpoints. And they could have wrote that. But instead he's all, talking about how supportive he is and how great the Empire is and how they take care of people. And you're like, what is this? I mean, I could go on and on. The fights were horrible. The one they have on the first planet is completely dark. You can't see anything. And then Vader, I reviewed this and I'm trying to remember. It was so bad. If you want to get more details, watch the reviews. But yeah, so Vader, I'm trying to remember if he lit the fire originally that he put Kenobi in, got rid of it or something. I can't remember. Anyways, that whole scene was horrible because the loader droid comes out to pull Obi-Wan Kenobi out of the fire, and Vader just stands there and watches it. And he's got a platoon of dudes, stormtrooper dudes, plus he has the Force. He pulled Kenobi into the fire using the Force, but he can't use the Force to just take him away from this loader droid, or better yet, get all of his stormtroopers to just shoot the loader droid? What was that? It was just a complete stupid, Vader's an idiot, right? To make plot go further, people have to be dumb. Then they have the next fight, where it's so over the top and OP. They're flicking rocks all over the place, massive boulders, kind of like how Rey did that in the stupid Last Jedi, the boulders. So ridiculous. And it's dark, you can hardly see anything. And so then you're comparing that to their fight in A New Hope, and you're like, bro, this is way OP. And then Kenobi cuts his helmet. So and the whole show was so they could have this visual of Darth Vader's cut mask with Hayden Christensen underneath it. I think that's the reason they made the entire show, was for that visual, which is what they do. They did it in Rise of Skywalker too, with all the ships, right? The stupid plot point about Lando. So just absolutely awful, lore-breaking, stupid show. Ruins lines in the original Star Wars of them talking about, first I was the learner, now I'm the master, and all that stuff. And the sense you got from that scene was that these guys had not seen each other in a really long time, and now it's oh no, they have. It kind of reminds me of the Clone Wars when they put Dooku facing Anakin all the time. And then in Attack of the Clones, Anakin's my powers have doubled since last we met. But in the Clone Wars, they met 2 weeks earlier. You're and that's Dave Filoni, guys. That's how they write. They don't think about anything. Anyways, just a god-awful show. Absolutely awful. There is one worse Disney Plus show, though. But next on the list is The Rise of Skywalker. Do I even need to begin? This is third most offensive of all the content they've made in live action. I can't even believe how bad this movie was. It was just a MacGuffin fest, video game plot line where you go and find the next thing. The dagger was so awful, as if this ancient dagger is going to like give you the outline of the Death Star, and it fell perfectly into that perfect spot and has been there for years with giant waves everywhere and hasn't moved at all. And this ancient dagger somehow, it was just awful in every respect. Poe's begging for Rey to fly with him because he just can't do it himself because she's got to be everything. OP force powers. She trains herself. Leia's just there as like a stand-in to hold the lightsaber for her when she isn't using it. The whole Leia-Luke lightsaber training was stupid. They just threw that in because Rian Johnson made her float through space in the Force, so JJ probably felt like he had to sort of justify that she kind of got trained. It was totally shoehorned in and dumb. The healing powers, healing the snake. She got it from the Jedi text that somehow Luke didn't understand that. It's just so stupid. They fly now.
Oh, they fly now! They fly now? They fly now!
Like, as if you wouldn't know that. Stormtroopers have used jetpacks for a long time. Like, it's just so stupid. 3PO would have seen that multiple times, and he's all surprised about it. Falling through quicksand, and then they're inside of a cave. Well, the roof's quicksand, so how does that work? That was stupid. Rey shooting lightning was retarded. Like, she's just angry all the time, but never goes dark side. Her being a Palpatine was absolutely retarded. Somehow Palpatine returned. No explanation. That's literally all they said. Somehow Palpatine has the Force powers to lift 1,000 Star Destroyers out of the crust of a planet, but then needs the dyad. Needs their dyad power. Somehow he could extract the dyad power, even though he needed it to be powerful enough to do anything. It's just terrible. I'm all the Sith. What? I'm all the Jedi. What? And then instead of this wonderful ending we got in Jedi where Luke defeats evil with love, it's just a MCU power versus power, Rey and all the Jedi versus him and all the Sith, and then he shoots lightning to the point where he literally just kills himself. Like, if he just stopped shooting lightning, he's alive. None of it made any sense. The whole thing. Exegol made no sense. You've got all these millions of people there, but the planet's just a desert wasteland, and somehow it's secret, but then you're bringing in materials to build all these ships, and you're bringing in food and resources for all the people building the ships, and the Sith Eternal people, but then somehow it's secret? Like, how could it be secret if it doesn't make any sense. The whole thing makes no sense. What else? The fact that the Death Star even is there with large chunks when it got completely obliterated in Return of the Jedi. Like, you see it, there's no chunks. I think they were trying to be like Rodney Matthews is probably my favorite artist of all time. And that shot of the Death Star was very Rodney Matthews. And it did look cool. But you can't change plot points for your visual, which is what they did. Then there's the other one where I mentioned earlier, where Lando somehow so Leia sends out a signal, nobody cares, but then in 15 hours, and that's in Last Jedi, Lando somehow flies all over the galaxy and recruits like 1,000 different ships in 15 hours. What? All so they could have the visual, and look, there's the Ghost, and look, there's that ship, and oh my gosh. And then, in the end, she's a Palpatine, and Ben dies, so all the Skywalkers are dead. And it's called The Rise of Skywalker. And then she takes the name. First, she ignites her lightsaber for absolutely no reason, just like Maul does in Solo. So, oh look, it's yellow, guys. Buy the yellow lightsaber. Buries the lightsaber, Luke and Leia's lightsabers on Tatooine. Why would you bury their lightsabers? What are you doing? Like, why wouldn't you keep those? Like, what is the purpose of burying them in the sand on Tatooine? That's the dumbest thing ever. Made no sense. And then she takes their name And that's the rising of the Skywalker, is the Palpatine chick taking the name. Then we get to the final. I'm going to end this. Like, you could go on for hours on this stupid movie. And then you go back to the whole she's the Palpatine thing. Okay, so Palpatine literally says to her in that final scene that he wants her to kill him. And then he'll enter, his essence will enter her. She does that. And then I guess we're good. There's no indication whatsoever that his essence went into her. Like, it's just... And, of course, all of that's because they reshot so much stuff, and everything was last minute, and Palpatine was last minute. That movie's an utter disaster. Next on the list of the most offensive is number 2, The Acolyte. This show is just beyond comprehension offensive.
Put a chick in it, make her gay!
Sure, yeah. Well, let's try that. Again.
Excuse me, I believe I asked you to put a chick in this and make her gay?
Yes, the chef was a little confused what you meant by that.
They got her. You know, South Park is very aggressive, but South Park goes for everybody. And I don't like the way they phrased it. I think it's derogatory towards diverse representation, and I think it's insulting to, again, women and audiences of color and LGBTQ audiences.
Grace, we are insulted by The Acolyte. Offended and insulted. There are so many things in this show that are so bad, I don't even know where to begin, from just how cheap it looked. Everything they did. So there's a vergence in the Force, and that makes these witch ladies be able to use the Force to make 2 twins and impregnate the one, because they're a lesbian couple, the one woman with twins. The other thing that's weird about that actually just dawned on me. It's implied in the show that the Zabrak chick gave birth to the twins, but they're mulattoes. So it's like, so the Force knew to incorporate and make them half black. I just realized it's just kind of silly and dumb. But that's the least of the concerns. So there's a vergence. It makes these 2 girls. That really angered a lot of Star Wars fans, because Anakin was supposed to be the only, being or whatever that came to life from just the Force doing it. He was a vergence in the Force. So I just thought it was so stupid that it didn't offend me, really. Like, it did, but it was just so dumb. And I was like, well, but, Anakin also didn't, there was no witches that were part of it or anything like that. So I was like, okay, so I can kind of, like, it's really dumb, but it doesn't make me mad about the fact that how it relates to Anakin just because of that fact. The Force just did it with Anakin, whereas they had these witches and all this stupid stuff. And the witches are so cringy. They move their hands around like they're holding crystal balls all the time. It's just like this generic witch stuff, which was so lame. And it's just all women, and, like, it's just weird. Like, they're just, like, 50 lesbians raising these 2 little girls. You're like, hey, that's kind of weird, but whatever. And then the fact that the Jedi show up on that planet, and, like, they're trying to find the vergence in the Force using, like, modern tech. Not even modern tech. They're using, like, iPads and metal detectors. Like, isn't the vergence in this Force, like, presented in the prequels as like something that's, like, mystical and, like, something only Jedi would be able to kind of feel or kind of understand? Not something you can, like, use gizmoids to try and, like, find it? So that was horrible. The way the characters interacted was horrible. The Jedi, they're not fun at all. They don't really talk a whole heck of a lot. There's no banter. It's way too serious. And so there's no development of the characters, because there's just not a lot of, like, when they were looking for the vergence, no one was really talking or anything, like, very little. And when you build characters, I've said this all the time with, like, the OT, for example, you find out more about Han, Luke, and Leia in a 5-minute Falcon scene than in The Acolyte you find out about any of these characters in the entire show. It's that bad. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse, where Soul is supposed to feel guilty in the future because in the past he stabbed the witch lady, but at the time the witch lady, the mom, the non-birthing mom, the one who runs the show, Anastasia runs the whole coven or whatever, she literally, so the one daughter comes running out, and then she turns into this black mist thing and has fangs. And so, like, Sol, the Jedi guy, who's like a decent dude, he's like cares about these kids, and they're trying to recruit the kids because they're Force sensitive, right? For the Jedi. And this lady agreed to allow them to take the kids, and then she sees her daughter, like, she didn't agree yet to the Jedi. She didn't just say, hey, yeah, you can take them, which would have just ended everything. It would have been perfectly fine. They would have just taken them. But instead of saying that, out of nowhere, she turns into a black mist-looking bat thing with fangs and starts, like, slowly taking over her daughter's body. And it looks like she's disintegrating in front of Sol's face. So he instinctively doesn't know what to do, so he just stabs the fart that she became with his lightsaber, which kills her, which is super weird because she's a mist, but whatever. That kills her, and as she's dying, she's like, I would have let her go with you. It's like, why didn't you just say that from the very like when you guys met up before this whole incident took place? Why didn't you just say that? Well, because if she says that, then the show can't continue. It's so stupid and beyond comprehension. But then what happens is this Sol guy feels guilty, even though he did nothing wrong, and then lets the daughter, when she's older, kill him in the Force. She goes dark side, and then the other twin goes from dark to light and lets her memory get wiped for some unknown reason. It's absolutely awful. And that's not even it. That's one aspect. The Jedi see a Sith. The Jedi see a Sith. And the one Jedi who the Sith guy, he fights them all. He kills them all. And then the guy who killed them all, the Sith guy in the gimp mask, by the way. Good Lord, Leslie. I mean, are you trying to tell us something or what here? Anyways, with his gimp mask, he kills all the Jedi. And then the chick who he was apprenticing under with the Jedi shows up, uses the Force, sees in her mind everything that happened, and that it was her former apprentice that did it, and then lies about it. And then the Jedi do this big cover-up, even though in the prequels, they say they haven't seen Sith in 1,000 years or whatever, 1,000 generations. It's like, dude, it's just, who cares, right? Who cares what happens? Who cares that the Jedi are bad? And this is another thing they did. They made the Jedi look bad and liars, which again is the Disney thing, right? They're trying to blur the lines between the Empire and the Jedi, and which is, and they're not, neither of them are really that good or that bad. They're just kind of in the middle. And it's like, no, the Jedi are keepers of the peace. They're supposed to be good. Palpatine rising was because of Palpatine, and yes, they made mistakes, but they didn't make mistakes in an overt trying to be bad way. They just got manipulated. So, just absolutely awful, retconning stuff, ruining stuff. People were mad about Ki-Adi-Mundi. They didn't follow his age, his legends, age of his species, whatever. That, honestly, this show's so bad, that's the least of my concerns. It's honestly the least of my concerns. And then, like, even, like, how some of them, like, the Wookiee Jedi dies by getting this, like, weak little scrape of a lightsaber across his chest. Like, you see this little burn mark. He dies, but then other characters in Disney Star Wars, like Sabine and Reva and stuff, get full-blown stabbed, and they live, and he's, like, this huge Wookiee guy. You're just like, this is so inconsistent and stupid. And then the one daughter is mad that Mama got killed, so she somehow lights a stone structure on fire. Like, she takes an oil lamp or whatever, throws it on the ground, and a stone building, this coven they were living in, goes up in flames. It's made of stone. And the flames kill all the witches. They breathe in the smoke, and they're seen all dead on the ground. And that also, the show tried to convince us that also was the Jedi's fault. So because he stabbed her when she turned into a fart, when she looked like she was killing her own kid, because she didn't just tell him that she was letting him take them, then it's his fault that the other daughter went nuts, or the same daughter, I can't remember, and threw the oil lamp down and burned a stone structure that the smoke killed. That's the Jedi's fault. That's how the show tries to present it. It's on and on and on and on. The one guy, the young kid, felt so much guilt, even though he did nothing, that later on in the future, right, because they kind of go back and forth, back in time between when the twins are like 6 or 7 to when they're like 20. And the one twin shows up, and he feels so guilty about what happened, even though he did nothing wrong. Like, the flashbacks show none of the Jedi literally doing anything wrong. He feels so guilty that she convinces him to kill himself, and he drinks this potion. And you're like, what? You didn't even do anything. And on top of that, he's floating, and you find out from the other Jedi guy that he's been floating there since the incident, meditating on what happened. He felt so much guilt. So he's floating in the Force for literally, like, I don't know, 10 or 15 years? He has no beard. He hasn't eaten anything. No, it's not that he has no beard. They made it even worse. Like, if he was completely clean shaven, you could be like, oh, well, maybe somebody was going and shaving him. No, he had a beard, but it was just kind of like a shorter beard. But apparently he's been doing this for like 10 plus years, floating, no food, no hygiene, no nothing, and his beard's small. None of it made any sense. And then he lets her convince him to kill himself over an incident he did nothing wrong in. So the show was trying to convince us that the Jedi were bad, even though they never actually did anything bad. Then you had that stupid lightsaber whip, so you got gimp masks and whips. Again, I'm just saying, Leslie, what are you trying to tell us? That was corny, because she doesn't actually use it to do anything. There just happened to be this bug fly down, and then it's like, oh, look, lightsaber whip. Oh, go buy the toy. It's just... everything was awful. Coruscant looked cheap. You look at the shots of the Jedi Temple in the prequels, and it's just this grand, amazing thing. Even the smaller rooms, like the one that Yoda was training the kids in, looked very elegant and neat looking. And then she's having a meeting with all these senators, and it's like this tiny little room they're in with blue and red and colors that weren't really incorporated into the Jedi Temple, and it just looked cheap. It looked like an 80s like video game movie background, and like you're just like, what? And somehow they spent like $300 million on this show. You're like, where did the money go? And then in the end, this Sith guy is still alive, and then they show Plagueis. You're just like, what? And so then you realize, oh, she was literally stealing Darth Venomous from the Plagueis novel, which is really, outside of all the lore breaking, they did do a reasonable job of presenting him. Like he pretends to kind of be kind of a goofy guy, but he's smart with potions and does this and that. They did an okay job of that, actually, except he's not a Bith, but I don't know, whatever. That's, again, the least of my concerns. That show was horribly lore-breaking, absolutely terrible, cheap looking, garbage, and ultimately it was, as Kathleen Kennedy said, tell your story, Leslie. It was really, you got the feeling it was about her and her family, because I guess her parents or whatever did not approve of her lifestyle as an L. So she was doing that, and then she had a falling out with her sister, I guess, having somewhat or something to do with that, and so she did the whole sister vibe. And then they, in the end, they're hugging, and it's so bad. Definitely the second most offensive. Which brings us to the most offensive. And guys, to nobody's surprise, it is, of course, Ruin Johnson's The Last Jedi. There's so much in here that it's almost a waste of, like, everything from Admiral Holdo and woman power, and Leia and woman power. The Holdo maneuver was awful, lore breaking, stupid. Luke, what he did to Luke. I mean, do we even need to talk about it? I mean, emasculate him. He's drinking the titty milk. He hates the Jedi, which makes absolutely no sense. He's describing things in the prequels that Obi-Wan would have told him, and he still loved the Jedi anyway, and did what he did and saved his dad. And then now he's just this bum. And then, of course, all of that was because they had to make Rey the one that brings him back. And then instead of actually, like, fighting and caring, he shows up as a hologram. And instead of, like, trying to convince his nephew to be a good guy. He literally just berates him and makes him more mad. Like, you're like, what? It's bad enough you didn't even show up, but then you berate him and you're turning him further away and talking about how great the new real Last Jedi is, who's Rey, instead of trying to talk to your nephew like he's your nephew. The whole thing was awful. The Force Skyping and the simping, like Kylo, instead of being a villain, was just more of a simp to Rey. Just loved seeing her. He's got his shirt off. It was just so corny. Just completely ruined Luke's character, like totally destroyed it. Leia floating through space was utterly... Even if she was super powerful in the Force, that's totally stupid. Totally stupid. And in that scene, she's in space because Kylo Ren thought about shooting her ship and then doesn't, which actually would have been kind of neat, like sad. But if he had killed his own mother and after he killed Han in the episode 7, that actually would have been pretty crazy and would have added to his villainy like in a major way. No, he veers off, and then 2 random TIE fighters blow up the ship that Admiral Akbar is on, and that's how he dies. By 2 random TIE fighters. And then Leia, in the vacuum of space, survives and floats back into it. The whole thing is absolutely awful. The humor was bad. Mama jokes. Hux went from kind of a cool, officer to a bumbling loser fool. Completely changed his character. Finn, the potential was there. Former stormtrooper, okay, cool, whatever. Where are we going? No, he's going to go on some random, dumb fetch quest with Rose Tico, where the whole point of it is to show us how evil billionaires are. It just was so stupid. Rey uses the Force and doesn't know what she's doing. Like, so when Luke bides them time, even though he didn't actually do anything, because the idea that the First Order would walk into that base they were in and know where the exit was when they didn't even know where the exit was, and the only reason they found the exit was because of the dog thing running back to the back. This is a pretty big base. There's like 15 Resistance people. So the idea that like Luke even needed to be there to bide them time when they're all the way at the very, very back. The Imperials would have had to go in and like inspect the whole area before they'd even figure out where they even were. It would have taken them, I don't know, by the time they get out of all the walkers and everything, 40 minutes. So he didn't even need to save them any time. That was all pointless and dumb. Plus, snow troopers on Crate. It's not even a cold planet. They completely screwed that up. Was stupid. And then, so they get to the back entrance and it's covered with rocks. And then Rey uses the Force to lift like 50 huge boulders, even more OP than Kenobi was in the Kenobi show, which was ridiculous. But she's doing it looking around like she doesn't know what she's doing. Okay. And then they all get out, and then there's that whole scene where her and Kylo are fighting over the lightsaber. So they take on the Praetorian Guards. Horrible scene, horribly choreographed, absolutely awful. There's tons of breakdowns on YouTube about how bad that fight was. But then, after they kill all the guards, Kylo's like, "Come with me, I love you." And she says no, and then they fight over the lightsaber. And then the lightsaber explodes, and this is the Luke lightsaber or whatever. And then Kylo's knocked out. She's not knocked out. She gets up, grabs the 2 pieces of the lightsaber after it exploded, takes Snoke's ship off camera, and leaves while this dude's knocked out over here. What? What? It's just... So she's just so much more powerful than him. It's a joke. Oh, man. And then, like, even just the fact that the First Order used that much resources to get this... Why did they even care about the Resistance? Who cares? Like, they're following them slowly through space, waiting for them to run out of gas? Why do you even... It's so awful. Like, why would the First Order even care? There's, like, a handful of transports, 1 capital ship, and a total of, like... What is the official canon? Like 400 people? and you're the First Order who's taking over the galaxy and you're worried about this? But then even worse, they get to Crate and they've got like 20 walkers and this huge laser thing. All for what? To take care of the 15 resistance people that are left? What was the purpose of this? Go take over another system. Why are you worried about these idiots? They can't do anything. There's 15 of them. But they waste all their time and energy doing that. And then in the end of the movie, the whole resistance is 15 people. Like, who cares? And then Broom Boy, and I'll end it here. This is so absolutely stupid, it's beyond comprehension. So remember that Broom Boy kid? Okay, but before Broom Boy uses the Force, right, to grab the broom, Broom Boy and the kids are sitting in the stable, and the one kid's reenacting what Luke did on Crate. So just so we're clear. So the resistance is 15 people, they leave, and somehow all the way across the galaxy on Canto Bight, these stable kids are reenacting Luke's confrontation through the Force, he wasn't even there, with the walkers and them shooting him and stuff. And they're reenacting the whole scene that happened and talking about the legend of Luke. How would they even know? How would they even know? This is a few days later. You know, it's like they're still the same age. How would they know? Did they know Imperials that were there? Did the First Order go around telling the whole galaxy about what happened there? How would they even know? But somehow they just know. Because it doesn't matter. Don't have things make sense. And then, of course, the kid uses the Force to get the broom. And you're like, oh, so just randos are just absolutely awful. And then, of course, by the way, I forgot to mention in Andor, the Force Heal lady, same kind of idea, just this random person that somehow knows how to Force Heal. And by the way, that scene added nothing to the plot at all. Completely pointless. It's in my reviews. But anyways, all that to say, guys, that's the most offensive. You let me know in the comment section what you think is the most offensive. But I think we can all agree that it was 14 years of an assault on something that we really cared about. And that's my order of things. You guys let me know in the comment section what you think.
Are you optimistic that it can be healed, or is it forever tainted?
I think it's forever tainted at this point. Under her stewardship, they've taken Star Wars from one of the biggest pop culture phenomenons in our history to a bunch of largely irrelevant TV shows on a not particularly successful streaming service. I don't know how you even begin to come back from something like that.
Years too late. The brand is dead. Star Wars is not even on life support. That body has been buried for a long time.
If you like this content, please like, subscribe. Always helps the channel. Feel free to check anything else on my channel and have yourselves a really good day.